Hey, what's up? Zach here, and these are the 3 biggest reasons why you should or should not buy the Lebron Witness 6. Here we go. Now, the first and most visually obvious reason why you may or may not like these shoes is the visible Air Max unit in the rear foot as well as the forefoot. And as I've said in previous videos, Air Max is not the most stable midfoot material you can put in a shoe because it does lift your foot a little bit high off the ground and doesn't give you a lot of ground feel, so it doesn't give you a lot of tactile sensation, which could lead to a little bit of instability. However, in the case of the Lebron Witness 6, an interesting design choice. As you can see, the Air Max unit goes all the way here in the forefoot, but when you turn the shoe around, and I even cheated my cut way far to the outside of the shoe, you still can't see the visible air unit. So there actually is a lot more foam in the forefoot of the Witness 6 than kind of meets the eye just from looking at the shoe from the outside. And that might not seem like a big deal. However, there's just enough foam in here to allow your foot to kind of get a little bit more ground contact and ground feel to prevent a lot more of those ankle sprains that come associated with shoes with really big stacks in the forefoot. And the other interesting thing about the rear foot and forefoot Air Max units in the Witness 6 is you can kind of tell Nike knew that they were going to have some issues with instability because of these. So as you can see here, the lace line goes really high up into here in the ankle collar. And this is nice because it locks your mid and rear foot in. You also have a pretty high heel counter, as well as most importantly, the TPU winglets here on the heel, which really do, once you lock the laces in, give you a really nice and secure feeling around the heel and ankle. And the other blink and you'll miss it design element in the Witness 6 is these external shoelace eyelets that are integrated into the midsole. As you can see, they're woven all the way down into it. But the interesting thing is they're woven right at the end of the Max Air unit. So it's giving you a little bit more security right here at the edge of the Max Air, right where it's most unstable for your foot. And speaking of the uppers, they actually are a little more stout than I thought they would be, because on the upper durability test with the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the Dremel did bite through that first kind of suture tape layer, that white layer that came through. However, it didn't get through the second mesh layer. So although these are light and airy and breezy uppers, they are a little bit more resistant to wear than you think they're going to be, and they are a little bit more resistant to side-to-side force than you think they're going to be. But what could make or break your buying decision based on those Air Max units and just midsole and upper construction in general is that these shoes are definitely not made for tactile feel or feeling the ground or like kind of real low to the ground type playing. And they also have a little bit of a stiff break-in because when you first get into these, the Strobel board kind of feels like cardboard. Now, to my surprise, they did break in after a while and they did feel a little softer. I think that's because there is more foam in the midsole, especially around the Air Max units, than you think there is once you cut them open. However, even after that, these shoes do feel a little stiff, but they don't have the real violent push-off forces, say something like the Jordan 36 with the really stiff shank, because there is no shank in these. All the stability is because the foam is a little stiff and there's Air Max units, and they don't have the ground contact or ground feel as the KD14. These shoes are more meant for shock absorption and a little bit more rough play around the edges because the shoe is just made a little bit more rugged. However, because you do sit a little higher in the shoe and it is a little stiffer, you do get a little more of a cantilever effect out of them. And I ended up getting 30 centimeters on average on the jump height test, which is actually pretty good. However, that is while the shoe is new. While it does get older, I would expect that because there is no stiff shank, that foam starts to sink in a little bit and the performance will start to drop incrementally pretty quick once that foam starts to compress. And like I said, even though Nike did make all these features to increase the stability of the shoe, they still are not going to be the most stable shoes out there just because there is quite a bit of air between you and the ground. Now, the next thing that's going to make or break your buying decision is the outsole tread. And honestly, the outsole tread on these really excites me because it is a full bed of herringbone and it is a continuous pattern, which means it's going to give you a lot more contact on the ground, which means you're going to get a lot more stability from the outsole in general. It's a little bit harder for the shoe to kind of slip out from underneath of you. And not only is this a full bed of herringbone, but it's a full 3 millimeters of tread depth, which means you can use this on hard wood, indoor or outdoor hard courts, or even carpet courts. And if you look at the outsole durability test with the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, only 1.5 millimeters of damage, which really blows away a lot of other shoes we've tested this year with the durability test. So I mean, finally a shoe that's really meant for outdoor play and really excels on those outdoor court surfaces. Now, a good example of this full bed continuous herringbone in action is on the suicide test. Now, 15.05 seconds is not the fastest time I've ever registered by a long shot. However, I did this test on a pretty slick outdoor court right after a rainstorm, right after the court had dried, just to see how well these things would grip. And I found I actually had a lot of confidence, even on a slicker court, and it did kind of pick up speed really fast on the straight just because it is a lighter shoe. So on an outdoor court, even a slicker one, that herringbone does grip pretty well. However, the flip side to that is these aren't going to be as tacky on an indoor hardwood court. Once the rubber was a little bit roughed up, it did get a little bit better. However, it's not going to have the traction of some of those clearer rubbers or those rubbers with the more digital kind of skinny herringbone or regenerative patterns. So although it is going to be a little bit better on outdoor courts, it's not going to be as good as some other shoes on the indoor. Now, the third reason you may or may not want to buy the Witness 6 definitely comes down to the fit, because these are a little bit different than some other basketball shoes I've seen this year. Number one, I think the biggest detractor is the tongue and lace line. Because it comes up so vertical and the tongue is just a little thin right here in the middle, the laces can dig into your foot. So you will want to put some sort of moleskin or foam pad underneath the tongue, and that does help a lot. The next thing is the fit of these are pretty generous. So if you are on the really narrow end of the spectrum, probably would want to go down a half size or just look for something else. Because of the max air unit in the forefoot, the uppers are really light and it does fit pretty generous. You actually might be moving around in the shoe, and that could leave you prone to midfoot sprains. That's something you really have to look out for. And like I said before, even though there are a lot of stability enhancements in the shoe, there is still air between your forefoot and the ground, which does make this just a little bit more unstable than something with just pure foam in the forefoot or a little bit of a lower stack in the forefoot. So if you are someone prone to midfoot or ankle sprains, I probably would just look for a different shoe that has a little bit better tactile feel, a little bit more security. However, if you don't suffer from ankle sprains, at least in my opinion, if you're looking for a shoe to beat up, especially on an outdoor court, for the price, these actually aren't a bad shoe. But I'd love to hear from you. Are you someone that likes this more rugged kind of outdoor construction of the shoe? Or are you someone going more to the indoor hardwood or maybe actually LeBron 18 or 19 type construction? Let me know in the comments below. And if you are a player that wants a little bit more security and side-to-side stability, then make sure you check out my review and teardown of the KD14 up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next video.